All right, let's get started. Okay. So here we are. All right, so no one's put any questions into the chat. That's a problem already. Very difficult to actually do anything if you're not telling me what it is you need to do. So let's go ahead and get an audio check done, make sure everybody's understanding me, hearing me, etc. If someone could write into the chat that they're hearing me. There is obviously a delay. We are live, so expect that to somewhat goof this up. One moment. All right. Very good. Okay, question 42. So it sounds like you are hearing me. So I'm just going to go ahead and get to it. The first request was 42. We're going to do 42. We're going to go for probably about an hour. I expect to end around 8 o'clock. Best I can do. I just want to repeat my shock at the number of students in all three classes. Yes, I can see Mr. Mann's class as well. That have not yet begun this assignment, which is required and is going to count for half the quiz grade of combined with what you're going to do in class on Tuesday. I mean, maybe you have a plan. I'll assume that's true. But in the meanwhile, Jordan asked for 42. So let's do 42. Okay. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. All right, so 42. Okay, so as always, we want to make sure that we are looking at the document first. This is the best way to do anything. All right, so this is a tough document. So this is a data document. Data documents are always a little more challenging. One of the things that makes them challenging is that it's not explicitly telling you anything. The idea is you're supposed to find the trend in the documents, right? So the expenditures. So let's talk about that word expenditures right there. And by the way, following along on your own AP Classroom is fine if you want to do that. But I'm going to, this should be visible on the stream, no problem. The expenditures shown in the table most strongly illustrate which of the following. Okay, so the word expenditures is just a fancy word that means spending. The amount of money spent. That's all it means. Most strongly illustrate which of the following. So you've got these various options here. And then you have obviously this large data set here. So what I would do is start by reading the actual data and understanding a little bit more. We're looking for the spending in the chart. Now, they've done you a favor. They used the word expenditures, right over here. And then they went ahead and used the word expenditures right over there. So you can kind of ignore the revenue pieces. So just to kind of help you understand, revenue is income. It's the money coming in, right? When a business earns money, that's revenue. Expenditures are what you have to spend. So if you can think of it a little bit like, your parents earn their paychecks, that's family revenue. They have to spend it on bills and day-to-day expenses and all that. That's expenditures. So, all right. So, colonial official salaries and other expenses is 17 million-ish French francs. That's just the currency in question here. We've got public works, communication, infrastructure at about 4.8 million. You've got sleeping sickness related personnel and other medical costs. Now this is where in Africa. All right, so sleeping sickness is like malaria. All right, that's probably what they're referring to, malaria there. Sleeping sickness has been used in a few different contexts in history, but I think they're referring to malaria here. And other medical costs, 2.7 million. Other expenditures, which is just who knows what it is, right? It's other, which is a huge chunk. It's 15 million. Now, these figures are a report of the Togo colonial government to the Ministry of Colonies in Paris. These are the annual revenues and expenditures of the African French colony of Togo, 1938. So not that old at all. So the expenditures most strongly illustrate which of the following. So if I was looking for a trend here, leaving other out for a moment because we don't know what that is, I see three named elements, right? I see these three here. And what I'm noticing is there's an enormous gap between what colonial officials are being paid to run this colony versus making the colony more functional. For example, public works, communication, infrastructure. So public works are things like water, sanitation, In 1938, lighting, if you have like, street lighting, things of that sort. Communication would be things like telegraph, or in the modern world, like phone lines, internet lines, etc. as communication. And then infrastructure is usually like roads, electrical grids, bridges that work or that need to be built to connect places that are otherwise quite separate. If you notice, there's a very small slice spent on that. There's even less spent on medical costs for whatever medical issues are going on. Let's call it malaria for the moment. So in total, if you compare the two, there's a very huge difference between colonial officials and what they're earning. And by the way, guys, keep putting questions in chat so I can look over at chat when I'm done with this question, because I'm about to finish it, and then move on to the next one. So don't be shy. Throw it in the chat. If only one person asks, that's fine. That one person is going to get all the attention. Okay? If the rest of you thought we were going to go question by question and you were going to get your whole test answered for you, that's not possible in an hour. The goal is to explain how to do the questions. So I see these trends and I go, man, the French government that runs this colony, absolutely is spending most of its money on colonial salaries and other expenses. Like, absolutely the case. So, I'm going to read the choices now. Despite some medical advances, the environment in Africa continue to present unique challenges to European imperialism. Despite economic challenges they face at home, European imperial powers continue to finance local manufacturing in their colonies. There's no evidence of that in here, in the expenditure part. The primary objective of European imperialism in Africa was to stop the rule of private joint stock companies. There's nothing in here to indicate that would be accurate. European colonial powers did not build roads, bridges, or railways in the African territories under their control. Now, well, they did build some. I mean, that would not be accurate. So, by the way, I haven't looked at the answers. So sometimes I'm also thinking out loud because I want you to see how you think about arriving at answers. If I know the answer ahead of time, that's not usually helpful for students. So, okay, so I think if we're looking for these expenditures, right, you could certainly say, I think A is a worthy candidate, and we'll talk about why in a second. I think B cannot be proven. Despite economic challenges they face at home, there's nothing here to prove that. European imperial powers continue to finance local manufacturing. There's no evidence of manufacturing here at all. Like if they had said, factories, things like that, not really. There's nothing here about that you can really see. The primary objective of European imperialism in Africa was to stop rule of private. Again, nothing here illustrates that. You can get rid of that. European colonial powers did not build roads. Now, this might be tempting, but it's wrong. It's wrong because it's not the case that they didn't do any of that. Now, you might read public works, communication, infrastructure, and not know that means things like roads, bridges, and railways. See, this is why I don't like to read the questions ahead of time, and I don't like to prep ahead of time, because as I was reading it, I want to make sure that we don't have those kind of issues. So, European colonial powers not building roads, that's not accurate. It's in there. It may be the least of what they're spending their money on, but they are doing it. Now, why is A most likely accurate? And let's find out if it actually is. It is. So here's the argument for A. A's argument is, despite some medical advancements, it's 1938, right? Despite some medical advancements, we're still looking at the fact that there is a line in the budget devoted to a singular disease. Like, that's something, right? You have a line in the budget whose only job is, hey, how much are we spending on combating malaria? Or even if you didn't know it was malaria, sleeping sickness, right? How much are we spending on that? And the answer is, well, enough that it was worth its own line. They didn't have a line for like flu or anything else. This is such a, and maybe they do, and maybe it's under other, but this is such a big item that they put it as their own line in the budget. So that's quite a bit of evidence that they're actually dealing with that. Now, the trend I identified, the idea that this is a huge number, and this number is very small by comparison, just simply didn't factor into this question. That's perfectly normal. Like, it's just because a trend exists doesn't mean they're going to ask you about the trend. Anyway, that's the answer to that question. All right, let's go on to number 7. So, number 7. Okay, so we got a map here on the left of the Trans-Saharan Trade Network from 1200 to 1500. We actually even studied some of these places. We looked at modern pictures of places like Tagaza and Sigil Massa. These places still theoretically exist. Some of these places are obviously no longer a thing. In the period circa after 1450, trade along the route shown on the map declined. Okay, so why it declined? Let's talk about why it declined. So, Mo, you mentioned you picked C. Okay, so let's go through the answers. If you look at the map, there isn't really a lot to the map, right? It's just these connections, just these trade routes. That's all it is. Decrease in demand for African manufactured goods in Europe. So there's no African manufactured goods anywhere along this trade network. What are we trading? Gold and salt is accurate. The salt is being mined here, right? And then the gold is moving its way up the gold is being mined in Central Africa and being brought in here. Salt is being either taken from the Central Desert or from the sea salt along the Mediterranean coast, and that is being brought south. So there really isn't any manufacturing going on here. These aren't manufacturing cities. That's not a thing, especially in those eras. Okay, this is well before the Industrial Revolution. B, collapse of European economies in the wake of bubonic plague. Okay, so European economies absolutely do have a disaster zone after the bubonic plague. However, bubonic plague does not affect this trade network. And in fact, bubonic plague, Black Death, by the way, for those who don't know, bubonic plague is actually helped by trade, because one of the reasons it got all the way from China, the bubonic plague, the Black Death, absolutely started in China and made its way all the way west. And it did that through the Silk Road, and it did it largely because the Mongols had conquered and organized the trade of the Silk Road after they conquered all that territory, that it became a very safe and smooth way to travel because no one was messing with the Mongols, because they were the only power. So as a result, trade flowed freely, and that meant everything that comes along with people flowed freely. That included disease. So that's absolutely the case. Disruption caused by the adoption of new gunpowder weapons. Okay, although 1450 is the introduction of serious use of gunpowder, like for example, 1453 is going to see the end of Constantinople as a, pardon me. Okay. So, although the Silk Road, although gunpowder at this time was something that was a problem, and that it's starting up as a new technology being used by, particularly at first, Muslim empires, but then later others. Regardless of any of that, it's just too soon. It has nothing to do with this area, so it's a little bit too soon. So there's no gunpowder in North Africa that's going to be used in these trade networks or would cause trade networks to decline. Not really, sorry. So maritime trade along the African coast is the answer, right? So the reason it's the answer, and I'm going to I'm clicked on the wrong thing. Sorry, I'm clicking on my stream interface instead of my actual screen here. 1 second while I get my, there we go, get my chat back. Okay, so the reason why D is going to be your right answer is because, well, it says it there, but 1450 represents that era when Europeans start to go around the coast. So if I'm a European, I don't need to do any of this, right? I can just sail myself around the West African coast, and the Portuguese did, set up all these little ports along the way, and I don't have to go into the Central Desert to get anything. I can go basically to the source, so it became unnecessary, this trade. It just wasn't really important anymore. All right, so that was question 7. Question 19 is a request. Let's go there. Okay, outside the Ottoman Empire, Sufis contribute. Okay, so the Sufis are going to be in this course at the very least a huge example of Islam's spread that was not military. This is kind of important. So most of Islam's spread is militaristic. They conquer territory, and as the conquerors of that territory, they now bring their religion with them. It's the dominant religion. It almost certainly brings people into the fold as people who are going to want to be a part of that religion to get all the benefits of being part of the ruling class. And remember, right, the general premise, conversion is rarely sincere, right? People often change religion not because they really want to or really care to or they have a real change of sort of spirituality, but rather there's a benefit for doing it. Now, every religion knows that. People aren't fooled by that typically. It's not 100% true, but it's quite often true. But remember the point of conversion. The point is the next generation down the line. If you have a child raised in the traditions of Islam, even if dad wasn't really a particularly sincere Muslim, he was a Jew or a Christian, but he just wanted to get some trade benefits and a little less taxes and have a little more freedom in society, Doesn't matter much. When dad is an old man and dies off, and then the child is raised in a Muslim household, and then that child's child is raised in a Muslim household, within a generation or two, you could forget it. That Islam, that Muslim family is now going to be very sincerely Islamic. So that's the goal of conversion. So outside the Ottoman Empire, Sufis contributed most directly to which of the following during the period before 1750. Now, a question like this may not even be helped by the document, to be honest. I mean, we're going to read it, but it may not be helped. Some questions are simply, what is the context? And that's just, you have to know it. So I want to make that clear. There's rarely going to be questions where you just read the document and answer the based on the document. That is not a practice in AP. AP is document plus your knowledge, or just your knowledge. So we'll read the document together. We'll see if it has anything to help us here. But it's very possible it may not, and you're just asked to provide the context. So, document is Khatib Kalebi, Ottoman official, writing something called The Balance of Truth, which is a philosophical and scientific treatise. Treatise just means like a essay or a book. 1656, okay. Many Ottoman Sunni religious scholars have labeled the Sufi whirling rituals, that is, and they have a star for you, and it says that's religious observances practiced by some Sufis in the Ottoman Empire. Yeah, they would do that. They would basically do like a whirling style dance in order to sort of get into a spiritual mind frame. It's not uncommon for religions all over the world to do stuff like that. Where can I get access to this practice test? On AP. It was assigned to you. If you're in our classes, it was assigned to you. So if it wasn't, I don't know who you are. But sorry, I don't recognize the usernames and I don't really want to. But this was assigned to everybody in all of the AP World classes, so you have access to it. Sorry about that. Let me tell this person I am streaming. Okay. Sorry, I should have been off. Okay, off now. Many Ottoman Sunni religious scholars have labeled the Sufi whirling rituals as dancing and have pronounced them forbidden, branding those who approve of them as infidels. So the Sufis are a different sect of Islam. So they're not mainstream Sunni. So obviously we talked about from day one, the death of Muhammad, you got the Sunni versus Shia split. And then you have within Sunni and Shia other different religious sort of sects, the same way you do in Christianity. And then there are other sort of, kind of adjacent practices that are, like the Sufis as an example. They are still Muslims. The Sufis counter that these rituals are not dancing, argue that they enliven the soul through a combination of music and movement, which they say allows them to focus on the spiritual aspects of religion. Again, a lot of religions do that, or have a similar way of doing that. All right. I mean, you could just argue it's nothing more than prayer in motion, right? What is prayer? Prayer is meant to do the same thing. It's just meant to focus your mind on spirituality. Okay. The common people flock to the Sufis, giving them offerings and gifts. Since their whirling rituals play a big part in their popularity, they will not abandon these practices anytime soon. The Sunni scholars have written many tracts and opinions against them, and this tug of war between the two parties has brought them into a vicious circle. Okay, there is nothing in this document that's going to help you get this question right. There's one line that kind of helps, but this is pure context. You have to know your material. If you don't know your material, well, time to start learning it. So outside the Ottoman Empire, Sufis contributed most directly, which are the following. Okay, so I already kind of gave away the game. I didn't read the choices yet, but I said they're really good at converting people into Islam, especially along the Muslim trade route. So in places like Indonesia and India and places like that, the Sufis, especially southern India, the Sufis did a good job of doing that. So places where Islam did not conquer, the Sufis were largely responsible for the carrying of the missionary sort of religion of Islam to those places. So, scientific exchange, no, not them. The establishment of Arabic language and philosophy, nope, definitely not. The spread of Islam, there you go. I'm going to get, it even says Southeast Asia. I said it was Indonesia, for example. It's going to be C. I don't even know what D is, but it's going to be C. The answer is C. So it's going to be that because that's what the Sufis do. That's what they're known for. Now, you don't need to know much else about them. Like what I just explained to you is their background, right? Now, the one line that could have helped you is this idea about the common people flocking to the Sufis. That could have helped you. Maybe realize, they're really about converting. The common people like them. They find them popular, yeah. The Jesuits in Christianity might come up, and they had a similar role. Not that they were dancing, but they used education. So the Jesuits went all around the eastern world, so like China and Japan and places like that, and the Philippines, Southeast Asia, and they came with education, and they used education and teaching as their model for getting people converted into Christianity. So they believed in the mission of education as a model of both conversion and human enlightenment. And that's why most Catholic schools, even in the United States, are run by the Jesuits or a monk or a nun order that is adjacent to Jesuits. All right, mine was, my best friend was, a bunch of people I know were. So that's pretty common. Same kind of thing. It's like, who appeals to that average person and why do they do so? All right, let's see what we got over here. So we had number, that was 19. We go back to number 2. Number 2. All right, number 2. Which of the following statements from the second paragraph most directly supports the claim the examination system strengthened the Chinese states? I remember this question from a previous test. I'm pretty sure I put this on a previous test. So it wouldn't surprise me at all to learn that. And keep asking more questions, guys. We're running out already. Keep putting them on the list. You're not bothering me if it's the same people. I don't care. Okay. So, which of the following statements from the second paragraph? I'm going to read the whole document for the fact that you probably would have read it all by the end of question 1. So here we go. Under the Song dynasty, number of men who were granted degrees by passing the imperial examination suddenly rose, indicating a similar rise in the number of candidates. This was made possible by an increase in China's productive power and the consequent accumulation of wealth. Okay, so China had a lot more exams. There were more people who were candidates. This was because they passed the test. Why they passed the test? Because people got wealthier, so they could theoretically afford things like tutors and schools and stuff like that, where previously they couldn't. Makes sense. New class appeared in China under the Song, comparable to the middle class in early Western Europe. In China, this newly risen class concentrated hard on scholarship, as they would, because after all, that is the rock star job of China and always has been and still is. Government is the most important job in China. It has always been true. Still true into communism. That has not changed. In principle, the examination system was open to all qualified applicants regardless of social background. This is the second paragraph now, right? So we're focused here. In principle, the examination system was open to all qualified applicants regardless of social background, which made it unusually democratic, I guess. But I don't have to agree with it, right? But for a candidate to continue his studies without interrupting for such a long period required a measure of economic support that was simply not available to poor people. Thus, the contention that the doors of the examination system were open to all applicants was an exaggeration. And that was my hesitation about it being democratic. Like, it's democratic, but if you can't read because you're too poor to learn how to read, how democratic is it, right? But this guy acknowledges that good. Yet we must not lose sight of the historical context. I agree. The very idea that everyone should be eligible for the examinations, regardless of family background or lineage, was incomparably forward-looking in its day. Fully agree. It is true that the examinations not only produced officials loyal to the state, but also at times resentful, rejected applicants who opposed the system. All right, so you get two groups of people out of it. People who love the government and support the government because it's such a stepping stone to be a part of government that you can move up the social ladder. Or if you failed, it could produce resentful people. I point you to Chinese Jesus and the Taiping Rebellion. This is a good sort of balanced approach. Now, that didn't happen in the Song Dynasty. But make no mistake, rejected candidates angry at the government had severe consequences in the form of things like the Taiping Rebellion. When an old dynasty was replaced by a new, the latter usually undertook an early revival of the examination system practically unchanged. Now, that is absolutely true, and remember we pointed that out. If you're looking for questions or examples in, say, writing, where you have to talk about continuity, and there's an opportunity to talk about China. Talking about China as a system that constantly, resets under its core element, so brings back the social system of the examination system, brings back Confucianism, brings back Taoism, puts that all in there, makes Neo-Confucianism. At no point does really any Chinese society reject this stuff. Ever. They keep it, they keep it, they keep it, they keep it. Even the communists today, although they try to go a little less into the Confucian stuff, nevertheless, now, even that's not true. Now China's kind of using it as, oh no, Confucius is, the Chinese proper way and everybody else rips off of us. It's still used as a propaganda piece. And again, being in government and the importance of education is a Confucian idea. Confucius believed in the righteousness of government and government being ruled by scholars. So, of course, still to this day, that sort of subconscious effect is there. So yes, Chinese societies will often, even after periods of chaos and disunity, when they reform, they tend to take a lot of the core elements of China as it existed and keep them. This is why, by the way, most students, and frankly most teachers, struggle like hell to know the difference between an event in the Ming, the Song, the Southern Song, the Qing, the Yuan, the Han, the Tang, the Sui. Most people can't tell the difference because they look at it and they go, damn, this all looks the same. But if I say to you, here's Roman Empire Europe, and here's medieval Europe under knights and manors and stuff like that, they're night and day. Nobody mistakes a Roman governor or a Roman official for a European knight. And yet if I took a Chinese scholar from the time of the Roman officials in the Han, and I put a Chinese scholar from the time of the European knights, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. You wouldn't be able to know which one's which. That's an example of continuity, so keep that in mind as a strong way to do it. Now, the following statements from the second paragraph most directly supports the claim that the examination strengthened Chinese state. So which of these statements from the second paragraph support the claim? Now, the odds are extremely high. I haven't read it. The odds are extremely high. None of these statements are lies, meaning they're probably all in this paragraph. But which one most strongly pushes the idea that having this system helped strengthen Chinese states, meaning their governments, right? The statement, the most successful candidates required a measure of economic support that was simply not available to poor people. That's a negative statement. It's unlikely to be true. They're saying, probably that's not going to really help you necessarily strengthen the government. The statement that when an old dynasty was replaced by a new, the latter usually undertook an early revival of the examination system practically unchanged. Well, if I keep going back to ideas from the past, and so do people in the future, and so did people in the past, and we all keep using the same basic ideas, I come back to shoe tying, right? Why do we all tie our shoes the same basic way? Because it's the best idea we've come up with. No one's come up with a better one yet. When someone comes up with a better one, people might adopt it. But for now, it's the best idea we've had so far, so it stays. It continues. Why do we still have a keyboard layout, a QWERTY layout, that exists even on devices that don't have the problems of a typewriter, which is what gave us the QWERTY layout? Well, because it works. It's worked for a while. It continues to work. Are there better options out there? There are, but they're not popular. And the fact that people keep going back to this, even for devices that are fully digital with touchscreens, must mean that it works to some degree. So I'm going to suggest that B is probably our best candidate right now. Let's keep looking. The statement that the examination has not only produced officials loyal to the state, but also at times resentful. All right. I bet a lot of people would pick C. What this statement says is that, yes, it strengthens the state, but also sometimes causes Chinese Jesus to kill like a third of the world's population in one of the worst rebellions ever. That's an exaggeration on the numbers, but it may not be an exaggeration in China's numbers. All right, it might have been a third of China died in that conflict. So, this is saying that it's got pros and cons. So that's not necessarily going to strengthen you. It says it could even hurt you sometimes, the system, if people are rejected and resentful. So I think that one's out. The statement that the very idea everyone should be eligible for the examinations was incomparably forward-looking. It was, but did that make it work? A lot of things are forward-looking. For example, the Persian dynasty of the Achaemenids. Personally, Zoroastrian Persians did not believe in slavery. But in the days of the Persian Empire, you could not have had an economic system that functioned if you outlawed slavery. So if they had outlawed slavery, that would have just hurt the society. They personally advocated against it and did things like free the Jews from captivity, but they didn't just get rid of slavery. So it still existed. So despite the fact that it might have been forward thinking, it didn't make it a good idea given the circumstances, right? So I don't think D is going to do it either. I think our answer is B. All right, there you go. And I gave my reasons why. All right, so that was number 2. We're on to number 44. Let's go to 44. I don't know, did we not just do 44? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I thought we did and we didn't. Let's keep looking. 44. We're already half hour and we got 30 minutes left, roughly speaking. Now I'm going to cut it right there. Sorry. Okay. 44. No, we definitely didn't do this. Taken together, the two sources best support which of the following conclusions regarding the British situation in India 1940? Well, you know the situation. It was a mess. The Indians wanted the British out to a degree. The British wanted out at this point. The Muslims wanted their own country because they didn't want to be ruled by the Indian National Congress and the Hindus that made it up. It was a mess, right? So let's see what they say here. Two sources. All right. Remember I said sometimes the names matter? This is a man we learned about only a couple weeks ago. This is the leader of the Muslim League, the guy who first advocated for a state for Muslims and Muslims alone that was taken from previous Indian territory. This is one of the guys that advocated for the partition of India, that you needed a part of India set aside when the British left solely and completely for the benefit of having Muslims having their own state. They made 2 states, right? It was West Pakistan and East Pakistan. East Pakistan rebelled and became Bangladesh. That's another matter. But this was one of those. This is an important guy. So that name right away should hopefully ring some bells. And then Hussein Ahmad Madani, leader of the Council of Indian Muslim. All right, so this is a Muslim as well. So I got 2 Muslims here. Curious what they're going to say. Let's find out. Guy on the left, top source 1. This is Ali Jinnah. The British have for many decades had settled notions about Indians' future. Their concept of party government and parliamentary rule has become the ideal with them as the best form of government for every country. And that is true. A critique of Europeans leaving any country is that they left them with a sort of imposed democratic system. And in a lot of these countries, that democratic system has not proved particularly effective, either because it's not really a tradition those people even subscribe to. Democracy is not automatically a one-size-fits-all government. It has a certain set of precepts about the importance of individuality over communities and things like that, and so it's not necessarily a good fit everywhere. So that's kind of his point. It is extremely difficult to appreciate why our Hindu friends fail to understand the real nature of Islam and Hinduism. It is only a dream that the Hindus and Muslims could ever evolve a common nationality. Okay, and that what is nationality, right? It is India is what matters, not religion. That India what matters. That was Gandhi's position. That India is what you are. You're an Indian. You're not a Muslim or a Hindu. You're an Indian. Muhammad Ali Jinnah is very strongly advocating for that's a dream. That's not happening. Muslims and Hindus are not living together in peace. That's not a thing. Neither group is going to put aside their religious beliefs and adopt some sort of pluralistic, nationalistic identity first thing. Not going to happen. And I think there's a strong argument he makes for that. Anyway. This misconception of one Indian nation will lead India to destruction if we fail to revise our notions in time. The Hindus and Muslims in India belong to 2 different religious philosophies, social customs, literatures. In other words, they have 2 different cultures. And one of the things we said was multi-ethnic societies can work. You're living in one. They work as long as the people in the society share culture, right? So what color you are, what background you are, what nationality you are, not to confuse that with sort of big nationality, but like what state your parents were born in, what nation they were born in, whatever. That works fine as long as when you get together in the same place, you've got all those cultural norms. You speak the same language, you eat the similar foods, or you attend similar things, or you have similar entertainment, or cultural references for you are the same, or you're not necessarily just stuck mingling with an in-group, that you have the ability and the willingness to sort of be a part of a wider group that puts other things ahead of the sort of inborn cultural identity you have. You adopt the other culture. And he's talking about this idea they have 2 separate cultures. They're never going to be compatible. And they've been together under sort of like the rule of one nation or another for ages, and they haven't been compatible. So he's pointing to history here, basically. They have different epics and different heroes. Very often the hero of one is a foe of the other. And that's saying something, right? It's like saying, oh, we're going to get along, even though my heroes are Crusaders and your heroes are Muslim Seljuk Turks in the Middle East. Like, if I like Superman and you like Batman, they're fighting all the time, and Superman's my hero, then your hero's my villain. I mean, it's a reasonable point. To yoke together. Yoke here is being used like the idea of taking two beasts of burden, like two horses or 2 oxen, and the yoke is the thing that literally binds them together to the plow they're pulling or something. So that's what he means by yoking. Like together they're going to pull the plow of nationhood. He sees this as ridiculous. To yoke together 2 such nations under a single state, one as a numerical minority and the other as a majority. Remember, that was the problem we talked about. The Muslims knew they were a big minority compared to the Hindu majority, and they would be put down upon. They would be oppressed in legal fashion, and that's what he was worried about. Must lead to growing discontent and final destruction of any fabric that may be built up for the government of such a state. So, yeah, clear problem there. Source 2. We, the inhabitants in India, have one thing in common, that is our Indianness, which we share deep despite our religious and cultural differences. Now, he's already arguing. This is a good example of a topic sentence, right? He's automatically arguing the other point. So what he's saying is, okay, this is what he's saying. No, we are a people. Our religions are something else. We are India. right? Our Indianness, not even Indian, India-ness, right? So I think right there it's telling you that he's going to argue the point. He's setting up his paragraph. Just as our different features and personalities do not affect our common humanity, so our religious and cultural differences should not interfere with our shared association with our homeland. Therefore, like other religious groups in India, we Muslims he is a Muslim, so he's taking a different position as a Muslim, which is interesting, have a duty to struggle for the attainment of our common Indian interests and fight against the evils that hamper our common progress and prosperity. You can see a very different message here. This is what I mean when I speak of common nationhood of all Indians. The Indian National Congress, having the same position as ours, has made provision for the protections of all religions, cultures, and language in a future Indian state. On the other hand, the European concept of nationalism is unacceptable to our organization. We denounce it and are totally against it. Now, he doesn't describe what the Europeans mean by nationalism. So he just says that. All right, so taken together, you have 2 points of view, right? Very different. Both Muslims, so you can't say, well, the Hindu thinks differently. These are both Muslims. They both understand the demographics, the situation, the history, and so forth. So, what of the following conclusions regarding the situation is accurate? What does these things support? The British skillfully manipulated religious tensions. Nope. Nope. Absolutely not. The British never skillfully manipulate religious tensions unless it's simply to help themselves. You know, they will set two religions against each other to help themselves. That's very common. Indian opposition to British will involve groups pursuing very different political goals. Well, these are very different political goals. B sounds very good right now. Indian Muslim religious scholars rejected Gandhi's emphasis on nonviolence to achieve political change. Well, that's true. Jinnah is not advocating violence necessarily, so that's not true. No, neither one's advocating violence, so that's not true. There were people who thought Gandhi was unrealistic, but neither one of these guys is advocating that. So although it might be true that some Indian Muslim scholars would reject it, there's no evidence for that in these documents, and you have to use the sources. There was clear difference between Hindu and Muslim vision. There absolutely is not. There absolutely is not. There are Hindus, and this Muslim is saying there are Hindus who see them as a group that can get together and do things, and he is a Muslim. So it's not just simply like, oh, the Muslims think one thing and the Hindus think the other. He is a Muslim, and he thinks similar to the Hindus, and the first Muslim, Ali Jinnah up top, he thinks very differently to the Hindus. So actually that's not right. So I think B is our answer. And there you go. We have different people opposing British rule uniformly, but have different goals in doing so. We want the British out, but then we want something different when they're gone. So that's your answer there. All right. Next up. We've got, that was question 44. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, can you go over tips for questions with just a picture as your document? For example, 14. Sure. Document, all right, so I will tell you up front. Pictures, maps, charts are the hardest documents. Written text is not. Those are the easiest. Kids don't think that, but it's true. All right, so how do you do this? Which of the following historical continuities? All right, I once again remind you about this idea of continuity in China. It is one of the uniquely best examples of continuity in world history. Might help, what I reference said might help us, what I said before might help us now. I don't know. I didn't read this. Let's take a look. Now, how do you do a picture? In the case of a picture, one thing is to be able to see the picture very clearly, which right now I cannot do. So let me see if I can do it this way. Cool, hang on. All right, there's our picture. Now the caption. All right, the first thing I would do is, if it says down here what it is, believe it. So, the image depicts a Chinese Confucian scholar and 2 female attendants. And you can see that that this guy is like lounging out and chilling. It's hard for me to see too many details. It looks like behind him he has a picture of like another person lounging out and chilling with some other people doing some service or something. It's hard to say. He's a scholar. He doesn't look like a scholar. He looks like a rich guy with 2 women hanging out in his bedroom. One of whom is carrying a fan, which makes her some sort of a servant. And the other one I can't tell what she's got. It might just be the folds of her robe. But this guy is, he looks like he's almost half naked. You can use your imagination. It was what's probably about to happen when after this picture is drawn. But this is Liu Guandao, Yuan Dynasty Chinese court painter. All right, so Yuan is the Mongols, right? It's the Mongols. Liu Guandao is a Chinese name, not a Mongol name. Whiling Away the Summer. So Whiling Away, that's the title of his painting. Whiling away means to basically be relaxing away and sort of drifting away and letting time pass and flow and having a good time. It's like the equivalent of sitting outside in your backyard with a barbecue, a bourbon, and just like chilling and closing your eyes and fading in and out of a nap. That's whiling away. Painted scroll circa 1280. 1280 is indeed in the middle of the Mongol rule. This guy is distinctly non-Mongol. If you look at him, he looks very Chinese to me, not Mongol at all. And the Chinese usually depict Mongolians very differently than Chinese. He looks to be Chinese. I don't know if that's true, but he looks to be. And it says he's a Chinese Confucian scholar. So, what are the continuities here? Well, one thing I would say is, if you had shown me this picture, if I just look at this, and you say to me, Malvagno, what era of Chinese history is that? I'd go, I don't know. It's definitely at least like Song or Ming based on the style. I don't think it's Han or Tang, but I don't know. It's definitely Confucian literati scholar art. It's literally the style of that art, which is developed in the later Tang dynasty, is very, very prominent in the Song and the Ming, and obviously also is still used in the Yuan dynasty. My point is I can't tell. And if I can't tell, that once again speaks to this idea of Chinese continuity. Now, how could you sort of help figure out a picture in general, which was really the question. It wasn't this question, but pictures in general. One strategy I always use, and it'll be a struggle to do this on a digital format test. It is what it is. So I firmly believe I wish we still had paper tests. They're way better. But if you take a picture like this, and I don't know if I can do it here. Hold on. I'll do it like this. One moment. So if I take a picture, one of the things you might want to do, I find this to be effective. All right, here's a screenshot of that same picture. Is you want to sort of in your own head kind of mark the thing up. Put a crosshair on it. All right? And what you want to do is say to yourself, okay, there is a box occupying like the middle third of all space. That's this area here, okay? And then there is the areas around it, right? Usually in almost any image, where the crosshairs meet and the areas, the four quadrants directly around that crosshair, that's going to be where the center of the action is. In a case where you offset figures, this is any piece of art. This is just normal art anywhere, right? This is the way you do art. In this particular case, let me kind of Control Z some of this out of here, all right? I've got over here Mr. Chinese guy on this side and Mrs. Chinese women over here. And the idea is that this is pretty common, right? So they split the page. And that makes his focus being to the left. I'm pointing at something you can't see. His focus being from the left to the right. And the girls facing, right, their backs are to the right. They're facing to the middle. Almost all figures face to the middle in art. That's pretty common. So you should focus around that interaction. Ask yourself, what is happening in that middle third? Like, what is the action that's going on here? And it looks to me, I mean, to be a little blunt, it looks to me that this guy is chilling on his bed, hanging out, half naked. He's got these women here. And I suspect what's about to happen is he's going to be the master of the household and use these women however he wants to use these women. That's what it seems like to me. All right? They don't seem to be wives. They don't seem to be anything like that. They seem to be serving girls. This girl's even got a fan, like probably to cool him down. There's no air conditioning, right? And he's just hanging out in a loose robe. So I suspect that this is just that. That is the action between them. He is clearly looking at them. They're clearly serving him. They're facing his direction. He's facing their direction. So always look at what's going on in this middle third of any piece of imagery or art. This will be true of anything, even like, for example, propaganda. So if I were to pull up like a piece of very common propaganda, let me think of a piece of propaganda I know pretty well. Okay. Great example. You see this all the time. Here's an image. All right. Once again, if I do the whole screenshot thing. Okay. So, line, the middle third. Okay? Obviously, Stalin is, and again, this is totally different art. This is Russian, communist, Stalinist propaganda. And yet, you get the figure of Stalin in the middle. So, he's prominent. and he is bigger than everybody else. Not just like because he's standing there below him, but if you actually look at his proportions, his head is actually bigger than the other people's heads. His proportions are larger. He is the figure, right? And of course, here he is with the Russian state behind him as basically a backdrop, the Soviet Union state behind him, and look what's going on. A mass of people, all like, do you see? Look at that, right? What's the expression? Happy, happy. If this woman looks Russian, you're blind, but she's happy. So these are one of those sort of Central Asian nomads or the Central Asian, probably Muslim people that he dominates. Everyone's happy. Here's like a Turk over here, happy. This is, I don't know, a Jedi. I don't know what's going on there. Happy, happy. So everybody here is happy, right? Happy, 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 happy. That's meant to say something. That's meant to show something. This is like the kind Stalin. The Stalin who, here, likes little babies and is a cool dude, whatever. This isn't the Stalin that murders his political opponents all the time. Nevertheless, and you can see, right, always the action, pointing, staring, hand up, looking, everything's like that. And then the center of it is always people looking to him. And you see this placement all the time. So get used to understanding why art is drawn or taken or made the way it's made. You'll start to see these things. You'll start to see these trends. Use them, all right? This is understanding art. Frankly, it's the kind of thing that should have been taught in art class at some point, because this is how art works, like perspective and where is the action of any piece of art. What are the color options, right? Red, for example, if you get a piece of color art, red is an action color. It's an aggressive color. It's meant to elicit the idea of action, power, emotion, strength. Blue is a cool color. It's meant to be calming, things like that. So, it's just the fact that everything in here has this yellowish, orange, reddish tint is not an accident. The fact that the script is in red is not an accident. So just kind of keep those elements in mind. All right, now to get to the actual answer for the question here. So A is obviously wrong. There's nothing European about this in the slightest. Chinese art emphasizes traditional subjects and styles. I'd say that's probably true. Chinese art incorporate elements of Central Asian nomadic life. No, that's my point. Like, this guy does not look Mongolian. If you want a picture from this era, here, this is what I showed in class. So I don't want to assume everybody's seen it because not everybody in here is in my class book. If you go to Kublai Kai, right, and you go to his famous hunting picture, and you will get this picture on the AP sometimes. This is not that. This is the full image here. Open image and new tab. Okay. Jeez Louise. Is that just a screenshot? All right, it doesn't matter. So forget the low resolution. It doesn't matter. Kublai Khan's over here hunting with his posse of hunters. In the back, you have a desert and you have some merchants going along the way. It's a very clear image. This is just a thumbnail. But these guys are dressed not like Chinese at all. I really should probably zoom in a little bit. Here you go. This is him. These guys are not dressed like Chinese at all. This guy's in an ermine coat, or Maniver coat, that's squirrel belly. He's got his wife here. This does not look like that other art at all. This is much more Central Asian nomadic looking people and themes. This is that same image. All right, nothing here looks like this. This is traditional Chinese scholar art. So there's no Central Asian nomadic lifestyle shown in this image. There absolutely is here. They're out here hunting. They're on horses. They're wearing their traditional sort of Mongolian garb. This is the same time period as that image. So yeah, absolutely, this is no right. Chinese art stresses the importance of technology. There's no technology here. What is it, air conditioning? So the answer's got to be B, that this is basically more or less continuing using Confucian scholar art, and there you go. All right. Did I not do question 2? I thought I did, but let me double check. I did do question 2. Okay. I lost my chat. 1 second. Here we go. Question 34. All right, question 34. And hopefully I'll be able to get in that one. And question 45, or question 9. I mean, I don't think I'll be able to get in more than that, because I do have some stuff I got to do at 8 o'clock. Let's see. Okay. Based on the passage, the author would most likely support which of the following policies? Okay, there's another skills question. What would the author support? All right, so his name is... I'm checking his name because I want to know who the author is. Now, who is Kusanose Kita? No idea. Never heard of this person in my life. I was about to say never heard of this guy in my life, and it's a woman. So shows you I never heard of this person. That doesn't matter. What matters is they're Japanese... Oh, whoops, sorry. I moved my stream window. Hang on. What matters is they're Japanese. That matters. they're a woman, that can matter, and they're a political activist, that matters, and they're a member of the Popular Rights Movement, which is some sort of political party, an organization that advocates expanding voting rights in Japan. All right, so I got a woman who's advocating for the expansion of voting rights in Japan in 1878. I'm going to take a blind guess and assume that she's advocating for women to have voting rights in Japan. That'd be my guess. Most people don't advocate for stuff for people who aren't them. So if I'm a woman and I'm in an organization about voting rights and I'm advocating for voting rights, who am I giving my voting rights to? A 5-year-old? It's probably for women. I don't know, but probably. So, although I am a common woman, I've been the head of a family for some time, definitely. I can tell already. I'm not even going to read the document. I can tell already. Listen to the sales pitch, right? I'm a woman. I've run a family, which is the same pitch American women were giving post-World War I and World War II, right? Or European women were giving post-World War I. Like, hey, when my husband was away to war, I went to work, I ran the family, I handled this, I handled that. Why am I not allowed a political public face in my society of a democracy? I don't have to read anymore. I can almost guarantee that that's the answer. So, would the author support socialism to reduce economic inequality? I suppose I could read the question, but let me not. I could read the rest of the document. Let me not for a second. Maybe they want women's independence economically. Maybe. Industrializing. No. Rotating. No. Those are definitely going to be wrong. No one's advocating for something like popular rights movement. They want to go back to the Tokugawa way. No way. So let's read it. Let's see. I guess theoretically she might be socialist, depending on what she's saying. I guess it's possible. More likely than not, it's going to be B. But I have fulfilled the various duties it requires head of a family. Therefore, I automatically assume the government gave all heads of families equal rights regardless of sex. However, I recently found that this is not the case. I was told I have no right to vote, even for, like I said, even for the local neighborhood. But local wards, like local neighborhood. You go to like New Orleans, they have wards instead of like neighborhoods or villages. They call them wards. It's very common. Sorry. I was told that I have no right to vote. Right, we did that in the local ward assembly where I live because I'm a woman. I have also been told the same reason I'm unable to sign or co-sign legal documents, although I have registered my legal seal. I have my registered legal seal. Thus, there is a world of difference between male and female heads of families in terms of rights, but the rights and duties should coexist together. It should logically be the case that the head of a family has the right to vote. She has an obligation to pay tax, but if there's no vote, there should be no tax. That's pretty chill. So she's like, yeah, all right, if I can't get the right to vote, then you can't charge me tax as head of family because, after all, I have no right into deciding it. That's taxation representation. It's a very American attitude, right? There should be no tax obligation. However, I have to pay tax even though I have no right to vote, considering I feel my rights have been denied. Okay, so what would she want? Well, what would she support? We don't have a choice of voting rights here. Under no circumstances are they saying voting rights, so what would she support? Well, what is her basic premise? Women who are running households should have the same right as anyone running a household, right? So, as a result, would she support a socialist system? I don't see why. In fact, she's advocating the opposite. She's saying, I am personally making moves and making things happen for my family. I'm the one who's able to sort of keep it together and hold an income and whatever. I'm doing those things. Thus, I want my privileges and rights for doing those things. She's not asking for anything from anybody to give, like she's not saying, oh, I want stuff from my neighbor or I need more support from government. She's not going down a socialist road at all, right? So I cannot see that being correct. On the other hand, she is obviously a women's advocate and believes that women who can run households should have these rights. You notice that she didn't say all women. She said if a woman can handle a household, she should have these rights. So what would enable a woman to do all the things that this woman is describing? Well, obviously, increasing education would certainly help that. I'm going to suspect this woman would jump behind any educational cause for women or any cause for women generally, and that's why I think she's most likely to support of these options. I'm going to go with B. I'm right. Question 9. And we'll try and squeeze it in one more after this if we can. Oh, I just gave away the... Did I give away the answer? I don't know. I didn't notice it, so maybe I didn't. Which defines most important long-term effect of European acquisition of wealth and resources of the Americas alluded to in the passage? Okay. Well, I already obviously revealed the answer accidentally. I didn't mean to do that. Now, without reading anything, the most important long-term effect of the acquisition of wealth and resources. is going to be European access to cash crops, explosion of silver from Peru, and pretty much it. Those are pretty much the two biggies. So, the Inca general addressed the Spanish conquistadors of the following words: "What are you doing to our ruler? This is how you repay his goodwill. Did he not command all of his people to give you tribute? Did he not give you a house filled with gold?" All right, this actually happened. So it's kind of a long story, but basically, the Inca, the ruler of the Inca, the ruler of the Inca is known as the Inca. He was captured in basically an ambush when the Europeans sort of were badly outnumbered. They lured him into a city to basically take his where they made him think that he was going to like just basically execute them all, and they captured him in an ambush, held him hostage, and he was like, "Look, I really don't care. You like gold? We got tons of gold. I don't really value gold. We don't see it as a commodity. We'll give you all the gold you want." And the Europeans were supposed to like let him go so he could sort of kill his rebellious younger brother. It's a long story. Anyway, none of that ended up happening, and the homeboy got killed. So, which I find was most important long-term effect. They not give you this, that, and the other, but they have lost all they possess, and the distress leaves them no choice but to hang themselves. Thus, I believe, yeah. So it's all the money. So all that money meant that the silver and the gold and all that stuff absolutely helped this. It didn't lead to the decline of feudalism, no. That's not true. And by this era, feudalism's in sharp decline anyway, before this era. It did not decrease the influence of Christianity. Have you looked at the New World? Christianity is the religion of the New World. Smallpox was so good at destroying the indigenous populations in the New World that there was no way for their cultures to meaningfully survive. There wasn't enough people. So they were just replaced by European culture, mixed with some of those traditional elements. I mean, these people all speak Spanish, right? They don't speak traditional languages. The end of Christian maritime... No. Christians continue to explore all the world. The only real answer that makes any sense is that it's because of that silver in that trade. All right, I'll squeeze in one more. I cannot get to 15 or 35, so I'm going to go ahead and just do 45, which was the last request I can get in today. Okay. We did this one, did we not? There's another one. We did this document, so I'm not going to reread it. During the negotiations to end British rule in India in the aftermath of the Second World War, British actions were ultimately or strongly influenced by which of the following arguments? Okay, the British want out. They want out. Source 1, we read this, was Jinnah. It's definitely source 1 because they did that, right? This is know your history. This is context. We talked about the Radcliffe line. You watched the documentary from Anthony Bourdain, where he was in Punjab, where the line is. Pakistan and India today are fierce enemies. So, yeah, Jinnah wins the argument. They do split India and create Muslim states. They do this. It's a thing. So, source 1 wins. That's it. So I'm going to get rid of all the source 2 answers. They cannot possibly be accurate. So, source 1, the concept of party government and parliamentary law is the ideal. Okay, that he was arguing against this, right? So you have to understand your source. Jinnah said this is not right. This is not how everybody thinks. We can't just simply rely upon the sort of the morality and the ethics of democracy. That's not a thing. But this argument that if you put Muslims and Hindus together in the same state, it is going to be a disaster. That was Jinnah's argument. The British government was convinced of this. They drew the Radcliffe line. They split the country up. They partitioned India, and there's your answer. All right, gang, 7:59 p.m. on the nose as far as my live statement of just saying that. What can I tell you from here? So right now, I'm not going to... Well, I will. Hang on. I'm going to put it on the other screen so no one can see it. Right now, as of 8 o'clock p.m., everybody in this class, all 3 classes, has till 9, 10, 11, 3 hours and 45 minutes to finish this test. And if I refresh that page and look at the progress here since I started the stream. Okay, I've got all of 8th period with the exception of 3 students having finished it. And those 3 students are all... One has not started it. 2 of them have not started it. And it looks like the other one did finish it, and it just wasn't up to date. Yes. So 2 of them have not started it. You have 3 hours and 45 minutes. I don't know what benefit you're going to get out of this if you haven't actually even opened it. See, I can tell the difference between have you not opened it yet. Those who haven't opened it, or those who did open it, and you were, 1 second, I want to put something back on the screen to sort of put some more light on my face. All right, so those who have started it, and you're working through it honestly, as I recommended you do to start with, that's fine. That's fine. I understand it's in progress. If it says not started on my end, it means you have not opened it, which means you have no intention to do like an honest look at it and then try and look up questions. It means you're almost certainly going to go in there, slap a bunch of questions into AI, and just get the answers back, which has been a recurring problem in the course throughout the year, right? We've had issues on this. So that is the situation in period 8. Period 3, it looks like we have 5 students who have not opened it yet. Let's see if that's true. 4 of them, because one of these students have dropped. So 4 students who haven't opened it. A lot of kids in progress. Good. Like I said, if you're doing it honestly, giving it a shot, and then you're going to go back and find the answers after the fact, that is the ideal way to do it. I like that you've at least opened it. You're working on it. I don't know exactly what question you're up to. I could look at it. I don't want to. But for the rest of those who haven't even started yet, I have nothing to really say. Period 6. 5 of you have not started it. Yep. It's a bad strategy, gang. A lot of you in period 6. To be fair, period 6 is basically all done except for those 5 people. 3 kids are in progress, but I gather that they're just working on this as I'm here talking about it. So I get that. But those of you who haven't started, gang, across all 3 classes, at some point it's your responsibility to do well in the AP exam. At some point. Okay? Anyway, those who attended, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. We will do this again. How did we do on analytics? We had 88 views total. Not bad. There's still 15 people hanging around. Cool. Excellent. Awesome. All right, so I'll let you know probably middle of the week. Wednesday or Thursday, we'll do another one, something like that. If there's a particular topic people would like to cover, maybe not necessarily multiple choice like this, but you want to go over writing, you want to go over, I don't know, a particular time period, something like that, a particular part of the world, a particular region in a particular time period, let me know. You can let me know in any way you want whatsoever. You can throw comments on the chat. You can... I disable comments for the video itself, so that's not going to be possible. We can put something in Google Classroom, let Mr. Mann know, let me know, whatever you want to do, and we'll do our best to accommodate. Okay, gang? All right, thanks a lot. I'm going to shut it down, and see you guys tomorrow.